Hi students, welcome to the English class. In today's class, I will discuss with you Nelson Mandela part 2. Before we start with this part, let us brush up briefly what we learned in the last part of this lesson. That is the first part. Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa after long and brutal struggle and unimaginable life sacrifice. And they won the freedom, they formed a government that was democratic and non-racial. So this ceremony, inaugural ceremony, took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheatre in Pretoria. And when did it take place? On 10th May 1994. Many international distinguished leaders were present for this ceremony for the first time in the history of South Africa to show their loyalty to the government. Nelson Mandela, in his oath, pledged to uphold and obey the Constitution and to devote himself to the well-being of the Republic. In his speech, he promised the people to liberate them from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering and gender discrimination. No more there would be discrimination, no deprivation, no poverty. That is what he promised to his people. He thanked the international leaders for having come to witness the ceremony, and he was pained when he realized that the patriots who fought for the freedom were not there to see what their struggle had brought. Now coming to this session, according to Nelson Mandela, there are two twin obligations which every person has to fulfill. One is towards his family and the second is towards his people. In normal life, every person keeps a balance between these two obligations. But in South Africa, the person with the dark skin, if he chooses to serve his society, he was taken away from his family. So, Nelson Mandela could not fulfill the two obligations. He could not fulfill the obligation as a son, as a father, or a family member. As a child, Nelson Mandela enjoyed the freedom. He could run around his mother's hut or he could swim in the clear stream. As a student, later on, he craved for the freedom to be away during the nights, to be out during the nights, or to read what he liked, or to go wherever he preferred. This was a transitory freedom. Later on, he was denied the basic and the honorable freedom of earning his potential, to show his potential, to earn his livelihood, and to marry and have a family. So his idea of freedom that he had during his childhood days was just an illusion. He realized that he was not free. The little freedom that he was given, he was unable to enjoy when he found that not only he was not free, but all the people who looked like him were not free. All of them were denied the freedom. So that is why when he joined the African National Congress, he realized that it is not only his freedom was curtailed, but the freedom of all those who looked like him, they had no freedom. His hunger for the freedom changed into the greater hunger for the freedom of his country. And this is the time when his life was animated. From a frightened young man, he became a bold man. From a family-loving husband, he became a man without a home. And from a law-abiding man, he became a criminal. This was a change. This was a transformation in his life when he decided to join the African National Congress and fight for freedom. Nelson Mandela mentions that in the first decade of the 20th century, first decade means 10 years, the white supremacy had created the government that was the most harshest and the inhumane government, and Nelson Mandela's government replaced this with a government that was equal to all, irrespective of the color of their skin or caste, creed, etc. He says that freedom is indivisible. That is, the chains on any one of his people were the chains on all of them, and the chain on all of them was a chain on him, and so the freedom cannot be divided. He also mentions that the oppressor and the oppressed are alike. They are both ripped of their freedom. How? The oppressor is a person who takes away somebody's freedom, who dominates somebody, and the oppressed is a person who is a slave of someone. So both are not free according to him, as the oppressor is locked behind the bars of prejudice, of narrow-mindedness, and so both are alike, both have no humanity. So this is what we have to cover up in the second part of the lesson. What we have to remember is the twin obligations, that is towards the family and the people, and we have to remember how Nelson Mandela's hunger for freedom animated his life. So in brief, this is a summary of the lesson, Nelson Mandela. You have to read the lesson to understand it better. If you have understood my explanation and if you have liked it, kindly share it with your friends and kindly comment on it. Thank you.